The bell over the door gives a bright, brittle chime that does not belong to the room. Checkerboard tile flickers under tired, fluorescent light. And the smell is burnt coffee and maple syrup, so thick you can taste it. 12 boots cross the floor, with a steady cadence that ruffles napkins and makes the toddler in the corner booth tuck under his mother's arm. Jax takes his sunglasses off first. Habit. Let the room see your eyes, and it will decide to keep breathing. He does not scan faces. He scans bodies. He looks for the lies a body tells. The waitress is already moving toward them with a metal tray. The name on her tag rubbed pale to almost nothing. Kesha. Her smile is the kind people practice until it looks easy. What is not easy is the way her left leg hitches and then pretends it did not. Not a limp exactly. A favoring learned so well it has become rhythm. She sets down cups in a perfect line, and the right hand overcompensates for what the left side cannot carry. Her sleeve rides a fraction, and he sees it. A ring of healing bruises across the wrist where jewelry does not go. Purple fading to yellow. Finger marks like a small cruel crown. That is the first proof, and it arrives before anyone sits. Leon slides into the back booth and grins at the old joke about rocket engines and kids on the reservation. The others follow with leather creaking, and the jukebox blinks like a half-awake thing. Jax watches Kesha shift her weight to hide pain, and he feels the familiar tightening behind his ribs. His voice stays even when he speaks. Back booths. Coffee all around. She nods. The bell has stopped trembling and the whole diner listens to small sounds. A fork rests in the air above pie. Ice clinks in a glass. The cook door breathes open and shut with steam and the faint note of grease. Kesha returns with a creamer and reaches over the table. The sleeve moves again. The ring on her wrist is indisputable now, and for a heartbeat she knows that he knows. Their eyes hold for half a second. Panic flashes, and she tugs her sleeve down too fast. The mug is already sliding when she tries to catch it. It hits tile, pops, then shatters into thick white petals. Coffee splashes a dark flower across grout. The toddler whispers, oh, as if the floor could hear him. Kesha drops to her knees and gathers shards with careful shaking hands, and the apology comes out of her mouth too bright. No worries, honey, the old man at the counter says, setting down his fork like a gentle flag of truce. Jax sees the tears that stand in her lashes and have nothing to do with a cup. He sees the left leg take weight wrong when she stands and hears the soft, masked sound that follows. He remembers powder compacts and long sleeves, and the way silence can be a weapon. He hears the boy. He was at 15. Say the vow again. Silence is not safety. Silence is permission. Tommy appears in the swing of the kitchen door with a bat held low. Not a threat, only a visible choice laid on the table. You good, Kesha. His voice is gravel that care. Fine, she says, bright as neon, just clumsy today. The hawks do not fill the air with banter. The day has already given them the good weight of a charity ride. And now the room has handed them the other side of the scale. They drink the coffee that tastes like old metal and heat. Jax sets down 2 crisp bills for a small tab. He adds a plain card under them, face down. Just a first name and a number, printed black on white. No logo, no skulls, no threat. Only a door left unlocked if she ever wants to push it. He angles his body so the aisle stays open and waits for her return. Mom, he says, rising without looming. You take care of yourself. For a beat, she looks at his face instead of the money, as if triangulating intent without instruments. Then she nods, voice low as a breath. You too. He turns away without pointing to the card. He does not need her to take it in front of him. He needs her to have the choice. They reach the door, and the bell chimes a clearer note, as if it has decided to be honest. Outside, the daylight is honeyed, and the bikes look polished by it. Jax pauses before he mounts. Through the window, he sees Kesha at the table. She touches the white rectangle and flips it. Her mouth shapes the simple name and the simple number. She presses the card against her chest for a second, like a small, warm secret, and slips it into the pocket of her apron. He turns to his bike and sees them not arriving, waiting, parked at the far edge of the lot as if the asphalt belongs to them. Dark frames that drink the sun. On the tanks, a serpent painted in violent red, mouth forever open in a bite that never ends. Helmets stay on, visors stay down, engines idle with the patience of men who believe they own the clock. The threat is not an action. The threat is the fact of stillness. He does not look back right away. He looks up. The sky is an ordinary blue that does not care about men and their small wars. He tastes the faint metallic tang that comes before rain. He hears the old vow again, and it lands differently now. Silence is violence, could be a speech. It is better as a choice. Inside the window, Kesha sees them too. The color drains from her face like someone twisted a dial. Her hand rises toward the pocket where she hid the card and then freezes there. The tremor in her shoulders starts small and spread. She drops behind the counter and vanishes into the slit of the kitchen door. The door breathes once and shuts. Jax feels his own hand curl on instinct and leather squeaks under his grip. Leon steps close enough that their shoulders almost touch and speaks in the voice the crew uses when the room is not invited. "Boss." Jax does not give the dark bikes his eyes yet. He gives them his back, because they do not get to right his posture. He slides onto the saddle. Engines around him turn key by key, a rising chord that does not yet become thunder. He stays in the hush, where you can still choose. He holds that place a heartbeat longer than is comfortable. He lets himself have one look. The three dark bikes are still watching. The diner glass reflects them as smudges that eat light. He cannot see the faces behind those visors, and does not need to. He has seen men who watch like that before. It is not hunger, it is ownership. He gives the smallest nod, and the hawks drift into motion like a school of fish that decided the ocean was theirs. Signals tick like small metronomes. Tires roll through sunlight that is turning to amber. He does not ride far. He rides far enough for distance to do its work on anger. He rides far enough to hear what the room kept under its breath. He rides until Leon comes through the calm as a single steady line. "Back to the shop." "Not yet," Jax says. We circle. In the mirror, he watches the serpent bike still idling, still watching, as if the point of a mouth is not to bite but to prove it could. He shifts into the lane, and the open road receives them. He thinks of the card in the pocket of a woman who knows how to make her body lie. He thinks of the way her wrist looked when the sleeve slipped. He thinks of how easily a town can pretend not to see the thing that makes its coffee taste wrong. And then the leak arrives like a thought with a steel edge. He does not say it aloud. He does not need to. He knows. And he decides to make it true. The men with the serpents on their tanks do not know their evidence is already moving through federal inboxes. The vow sharpens into a path. There will be no loud anger in a parking lot. There will be receipts. There will be timestamps that cannot be argued with. There will be chain of custody that lives on paper and on cameras. There will be a way to make fear collapse without throwing a single punch. The line of bikes hums in even time, and the sun lowers to that hour where objects wear long gold. Traffic separates and closes again like a zipper, and the crew slides through it with the grace that comes from miles and trust. Jax looks once more in the mirror and sees the diner window. A silhouette stands in the kitchen doorway, small and steady now. The shape is only a shadow, and he knows exactly who it is. He thinks of the boy in the mirror who whispered a promise over a split lip. He thinks of how many rooms took his silence as agreement. He thinks of the bell that sounded too bright for the room, and how sound can be a lie. So he offers a different sound. If stories of earned justice are what you carry, stay with us. We are going to carry this one all the way. He does not say it to the camera. He says it to himself and to the men following his tail light and to the woman with a card in her pocket who needs the next hour not to fail her. They pass the last strip of storefronts where the glass throws back the shining line of chrome. The road opens into distance. The rain will come later. The decision is already made. The chapter is not a threat. It is a promise written in the ordinary movements of leaving without running. Behind them, the serpent bikes remain. They do not eat. They watch. Inside the diner, a white card warms inside a pocket against a pulse that is beginning to settle. And somewhere between the bell and the door and the road, Jax understands that the way to win here is not to be louder. It is to make the truth visible and leave it nowhere to hide. The road took the heat out of the day, and Jax rode his restraint like a second engine. Wind pressed his jacket and scraped the scent of rain and tar into something clean enough to think with. He had learned long ago not to carry a room's panic out into the street. You carry only what you can turn into action. Everything else is weight pretending to be duty. They rolled past the last pane of diner glass, and the line stayed lawful and steady. Cars decided they were polite men on loud machines rather than trouble with handlebars. Jax let the pace hold and let the vow come forward where it could breathe. Silence is not safety. Silence is permission. That line was not a memory now. It was a lever. He pictured Kesha trying to sleep inside the same town as the man who broke her leg and taught her body to lie about it. If she had to count breaths tonight, he would choose what kind of numbers she counted. 2 miles out, he blinked his indicator and pulled them into a gravel turnout under a dead billboard. Kickstands bit, the engines cut, and the world rose around them. Insects stitched the field. A far train drew a low note like the horizon clearing its throat. Leon unhooked his helmet and waited. He did not press with words. Jax took out a phone that never answered customers and scrolled to a number named for a city rather than a man. Morrison said the name of his own voice like a fact. Jax turned away from highway eyes and faced the gray plates of clouds stacking above the county line. "It is Jax," he said. "I need a look at a man who thinks time belongs to him. Vince, grave serpents. Scar through the brow. He runs a garage in the industrial strip. Today he watched a woman from a table he did not pay for. Paper sounds moved on the other end. Then the sand edge of the detective's voice dropped a grain. You saw something." A sleeve rode up. Jax said, "She carries a ring around her wrist where a hand does not belong. The leg favors an old injury." And 3 of his men sat in a parking lot and made a room listen to the sound of them not moving. "I am calling because I choose the language before the fight. If I wanted to punch, I would not be on your line. If you wanted to gossip, you would call a camera." Morrison said, "You calling now means you want something that does not bruise. I want her to sleep tonight in the same town and wake up without learning a worse lesson." Jax said, "So we are going to do this in paper. Detective, not wood." The pause on the line was not hesitation. It was acknowledgement. "The bat stays on the wall." Morrison said, "Good. Send what breathing proof you can carry. Plates, locations, times, anything with numbers that will not argue. I will never confirm a folder exists, but the right email reaches the right desk. And Jax, keep your men off the idiot button. I do not write letters to widows who tried to outshout a system that eats louder men before breakfast." Jax watched the cloud ceiling lower. "We heard you." The call ended without politeness. Jack stared at the black screen, long enough to let the choice harden into shape. He turned back to his crew and made the risk plain, because courage works better when you name the price. "We are choosing paper over punch," he said. "Paper is slower, and it keeps you standing in the open longer. Paper asks you to leave your anger in your pocket and trust that a clock can be a weapon. If we are wrong, he is back at her door before the ink dries. If we are right, he disappears into a calendar with bars." He let that sit on the gravel between them. Then he said the card they would play, and said it like a blade turned flat to hide its shine. "He does not know their evidence is already moving toward federal inboxes." Leon nodded once. Rico blew air through his nose. Part humor and part acceptance. Big Mike folded his arms on his tank, and the posture looked like a gate that would only open for the right thing. "Checklist," Jack said, and made the strategy into a second vow. "We gather, we time stamp, we keep chain, we record where and when and how. We do not stand close to his windows. We do not hide like we are the guilty ones. We do not touch a single throat. If he touches her again, we do not drive to his lot. We hand paper to the law that even lazy men cannot ignore." "Cold," Rico said, "but there was respect in it. Strategic. Call it protective." Jack said, "Strategic makes it sound like a game. This is a woman trying to live in a place that keeps its eyes half closed." They remounted. The first drops found them and drew small dark coins on the road. The line moved back toward town, not fast and not slow, a pace that said they were not running from anything and not running to anything either. They bled speed past the coin laundry and the pawn shop and the block where windows still believed in chalk. When they reached Kesha's building, they did not stop under her window. They parked across at a closed storefront and made the ordinary theater of men with a stubborn bolt to mind. Big Mike produced a wrench and set his shoulders over it like a mountain that could choose weather. Leon crouched by a rear set and made adjustments that did not need making. Rico tuned a mirror so precisely you could have measured him by it. Jack stood with the rain on his jacket and kept his eyes at street level where threat lives, when it is not trying to be seen. The door of her building opened and closed, and Kesha came into the gray, a thin windbreaker, a bag for bread and milk. She walked to the corner store with the gait that cost her, and now cost her less. On the way back, she paused at the crosswalk and raised her hand in the smallest wave a person can make without giving away more than they want. No direct look. Only the sentence that gesture writes, "I see you. I am choosing to let you be seen." Big Mike nodded once. The street absorbed it and pretended it had not. Jax did not wave. He would not hand a serpent a picture with lines they could misread. But he let the quiet of that exchange set like mortar in the plan. He took out his clean phone and did not text. He opened a note and wrote the date and the time and a line as plain as a ledger. 3 motorcycles with red serpent logos idled in a parking lot and did nothing but own the air. Helmets down. No plates visible. Presence used as pressure. He took one photo of wet street and timing and saved it to a folder with a harmless name. He toggled the location tags he normally ignored and left them on long enough for the latitude to sink into the file. Leon glanced up. "We going to the shop or starting surveillance now?" "Both," Jack said. "Shop first for screens and maps. Then we get the line between rumor and proof." They rode under rain that had decided to stop teasing and simply be rain. The alley behind Ironhawk's auto ran with clean ropes from the roof. Inside the office smelled like coffee and carbon and the warm dust of a printer that could tell the truth all week. Jax hung his jacket and placed the 2 phones where his hands would remember them. He did not waste words on furniture. He set the tempo with the same 3 beats. We gather, we timestamp, we keep chain. Leon booted the research laptop and the offline desktop and set 2 folders on the screen, receipts and maps. He pulled county filings and property records into one window and a satellite view into the other. Rico unrolled a printed county map on the table and taped it at the corners so the paper would not curl. Big Mike headed for the whiteboard and wrote the date in clean block letters and the words chain of custody underneath. He listed who and when and where as blank lines waiting for ink. Jack stood at the map with a marker and drew a circle around the industrial strip where Vince parked his legitimacy and a second circle where rumor said frames disappeared. He left the paint shop for later and connected the two. He wrote a question above the line. What moves between these circles that cannot be explained by anything honest? Leon found a shell company with a name that sounded like a teacher who needed a job in a hurry. He traced its agent back to an address that lived in a mail drop. He did not announce a victory. He put a small dot by the agent name and waited for another dot to make a line. Rico pulled up plate readers from public intersections near the strip and made a list of trucks that went where trucks did not need to go. He read times out loud, and Leon typed them into a grid. Big Mike picked up the printer output and stamped the top corner with a number and initials, and the time he did the stamping. He set each page to the left, like a card dealer, building a house that would not collapse. The list of actions stayed short on purpose. They were not building a war room. They were setting a table the law could not ignore. Document idle threats as presence. Track vehicles that connect the garage to storage. Photograph anything with a number that does not argue. Do not cross property lines. Do not be where a lawyer can call you a trespasser. Always shoot the clock. Always name the hand. Jax reached for the legal pad and wrote one sentence at the top beneath the date. We will make him need a calendar more than he needs a knife. He underlined calendar once. He did not underline knife. The rain softened to a steady wash, and the fluorescent hum found its old pitch. On the wall, the county map looked like a patient with 3 circles that needed a diagnosis. Leon drew a thin blue thread from the garage to the storage units, and a second thread from storage to a paint shop that baked frames a legal shade of red. He tapped the desk with his pen and said nothing until the third search result confirmed the same registered agent across all 3 properties. There, Rico said softly. Jax leaned in. 1 agent, 1 name. The line had become a net, and the net had a tag. He did not smile. He looked at the clock on the wall and spoke like he was setting a timer they could all hear. We send the first packet to Morrison after sundown with times and plates and a note that says, check the alley behind the warehouse after 10. We do not say our names. We do not say her name. We let the proof be loud, and we sit on our fists. Leon nodded and opened a blank email that was not from anywhere. Big Mike added a second line to the whiteboard under chain of custody. Transfer path to law. He boxed the words in and underlined them twice. The storm rumbled closer and then decided to leave them to it. Jack stood with his palms on the desk and looked at the map and saw not geography, but a series of doors that would soon be locked from the outside. His throat felt like it did when a ride turned from long to right. He spoke the vow again, not as memory now, but as a direction everyone in the room knew how to follow. We protect her by making him irrelevant. Leon capped his pen. Rico set the last printed page down and squared the stack. Big Mike clicked a stamp one more time and pressed it onto the corner where the paper wanted a mark to feel less alone. Jax put the marker down and picked up his helmet. The street would be dark by the time they reached the first circle on the map. The hawks filed toward the door without rush. They had chosen the slower weapon. They had chosen the one that held longer in the light. On the way out, he looked once at the rain streaking the window. The world blurred and then cleared in cycles. He let that rhythm be the last thing he took with him. Then he stepped into the alley, and the night took their shape and carried it where it needed to go. Rain polished the street until every light had a twin, and the sky lowered like a lid. Jax led 4 bikes into the closed gas station across from the diner, and killed his engine last, so the quiet felt earned. Neon over the sign stuttered, and then held a tired red. Inside the glass, the room was smaller than daylight, had allowed all corners and reflections, and a counter that knew the names of men who paid in cash. They did not park in a soldier line. They set angles that looked accidental and were not. Big Mike rolled forward until the pump island took him out of any clean sightline with the booths. Leon slid beneath a dead canopy bulb and opened a saddlebag like a man bored with tools. Rico propped his helmet on his mirror and fussed with a collar, and became the kind of customer the night forgets. Jack stayed standing under the rain seam where drops stitched his shoulders, and the visor bead pattern told him wind better than numbers could. He allowed himself 1 count to mark the room, and then left the window alone because eyes on glass become language. Kesha moved behind the counter with the economy of someone measured by speed. The left leg still learned to lie, and tried to disappear pain with rhythm. Tommy came out with a case of soda and set it down with a breath. 2 corner booths empty. 1 booth held 3 men in dark leather wet at the seams and stitched with a serpent that showed a red mouth that never closed. Scar through an eyebrow on the middle man. Vince by any other word. Jax logged the time the moment mattered. He did not trust his memory to be pure when anger got loud. He tasted rain metal and the old copper taste of restraint, and he put the line inside his head where proof lives when it does not yet have paper. He said the rule softly into the radio because it needed to be air before it needed to be ink. We are eyes, nothing else. The serpent with the scar turned himself into the corner like a man who believes furniture owes him space. He waved Kesha over with 2 fingers, as if summoning rather than requesting. She brought a pot and held it with both hands, so the tremor would not show. He reached out not for the handle, not for the cup, but for the wrist. The sleeve lifted by an inch as if it knew this choreography. His fingers settled on the bruised ring with the confidence of a habit. The gesture was ownership, not payment. Kesha tried to shift away without losing balance. The sound she made was not a word. It was air hitting a hurt. Her face tightened across the eyes and mouth, and the body did what bodies do when pressure climbs. The cup tilted and clicked against saucer and steadied again with a small miracle of control. The grip deepened for a beat, and Jax felt the line inside himself strain. He took that strain and named it for later. Force visible at wrist, friction at skin, pain response observable, a measurable pressure, a thing a prosecutor could point to if a camera caught it and say that is the moment. He did not move. His palm found the cool curve of his seat and held there like a man measuring weather with his bone. The ruined night from long ago rose inside his chest and asked to stand, and he told it to sit. He put breath into his mouth and out through his teeth, as if anger were heat he could vent. Tommy came through the swinging door with a bat, and with the courage to hold it in a way that warned, without begging. He did not raise it. He did not posture. He stepped into the lane to the register and made himself a simple obstacle. A man would have to walk through to reach Kesha. The bat rested against his thigh like a tool chosen for a task and not a performance. He put himself in the path on purpose, and in doing so he paid a price Jax would need to account for later. Protecting Kesha meant Tommy had just violated the spirit of the no-swing plan by offering his body as a hinge should someone want to break the room. Jax saw that choice and wrote it down in his head for the map that would guide the long play. Stake added, ally at risk. Civilian visibility increases liability, but also testimony credibility. He could hear Morrison in the back of his mind asking for who, when, where, how, and he lined the words up like bolts on a bench. Vince laughed without sound. He opened his hands as if generosity had survived the moment, and then set his cup down too hard, so ceramic spoke its sharp syllable. He leaned until Kesha had to tilt her chin to keep air. She stepped, and he shadowed. He said a sentence the glass could not carry, and then he tapped his watch. Twice. The point was not to check time. The point was to name it as a leash. Rain thickened for a breath and slackened. Inside the room, a pulse of fear moved like heat off a grill. Jax let the breath he had been holding go. The crew moved without moving. Leon shifted his chest, so his shoulder faced the diner, and his eyes could slide to Jax. Rico slid his phone out and aimed the camera at his own palm as if studying a crack, though the mirror face caught the door. Big Mike leaned against the pump and became a mountain in work clothes. They had learned 50 ways to be present without raising the line of a single eyebrow. Tonight they used all of them. Jax pulled the small notebook and shielded it with his body and made clean lines. A prosecutor would not have to translate. 3 serpents booth near window. Scarman contacts waitress at wrist. Pain response, visible. Owner cook emerges with bat. Bat held low, non-threatening but visible. Scarman taps watch twice. Implicit return threat. Kesha retreated to the coffee station and moved with the kind of precision people use when the floor feels unreliable. Tommy stayed where he could be seen with his bat, a statement and a promise in one object. The old man at the counter tucked a bill beneath his saucer, and then took his time buttoning his coat like he meant to make space for someone else to decide something. Vince laid cash on the table, not enough, and stood. His men rose in sync. Their gloves left dark prints on laminate, and that small vandalism told a whole story about entitlement. They put on helmets, and Jax watched the minutia, because the small tells help later when faces are a memory. The left side rider pinched his strap twice before a tug. The right-hander set a finger between strap and throat every time by instinct. Vince buckled by feel without ever glancing down. He had been fastening things blind a long time. They walked out under the awning, and the bell tried for cheerful and failed. Rain slicked their jackets and ran off, as if told not to stay. Vince paused, not to face Kesha, not to face Tommy. He turned his head across the street and scanned the dark under the canopy. He found the shapes whose stillness did not match the weather, and he let his mouth climb into a slow cut of smile. He did not leave it at smile. He lifted his chin, and with such patience it felt surgical, he brought 2 fingers to his temple and made a mocking salute toward Jax. Then he curled that hand into a tight fist and tapped his temple once more, and dropped the fist hard to his side. The gesture landed like text in the air. I see you. I keep the clock. You are already late. The red serpent on his tank brightened as he straddled the bike. Jax did not give the gesture a reply beyond a gaze that did not flinch. He met it like stone meets rain. He let the engine noise eat the rest. 3 motors rumbled into the lot through water pooled in low spots, and they did not rush. They idled to the street like men who own the right to go slow. Rear lights became 3 red commas, and then were gone. The rain hushed to a clean line. Leon breathed into the radio, barely sound. He made us. He did, Jax said. And that means the clock just started running faster. Paper only. If you move a wrench out here, you buy him the win. Across the glass, Kesha sank onto a stool and pressed her face into her hands. Tommy kept his palm on her shoulder and did not talk. He held the weight of witness without demanding thanks. Jax watched long enough to be sure breath returned to her ribs, and then he let the window go. He drew a vertical line in the notebook and wrote the order of work beneath it with the neatness anger cannot disturb. Rotate 2 and 2 until close. No stare, no heroics. Call first film second, move only after. If serpents return and idle log. The nothing because nothing can be pressure. If touch happens again, our evidence goes before fists do. Rico swallowed a smile that had nothing to do with humor. Big Mike nodded. Once the slow gait of a man who carries 5 kinds of patience in the same chest, Leon checked the diner clock and read the time into the ether of the crew channel like a metronome. They held the corner like you hold a door for a stranger whose arms are full, not with brawn but with presence. 10 minutes stretched. The store across the street clicked dark, and a cat replaced the clerk in the window as if promoted by weather. A bus hissed at the light and left warmth behind like a small domestic mercy. The crew rotated places without speaking. The pattern felt practiced, and also new because the risk had widened around them. The gesture at the temple had made it personal and public at once, and the next move would test whether Restraint could still command the room. Jax wrote 2 more entries at neat intervals. No reappearance. Waitress visible. Cook present with bat. Street normal. Threat ambient. He added 1 note he had not expected to write. Waitress touches apron pocket and steadies. He erased the clinical word and wrote her name. Kesha checks for card. Self-comms. A small human act logged for a system that tends to forget such things. Make nights survivable. Movement at the far curb and every back stiffened by a hair. Not serpents. A delivery van nosed at the alley mouth and reconsidered and left. Jax marked plate and time anyway, because practice makes the hand move true when it finally matters. The useless line became a rehearsal for the later useful. Vince did not return in that hour. He did not need to. The tap on the watch and the salute and the dropped fist hung in the air like a dare. The crew kept their portion of street and made sure the dark did not close its eyes. When the clock on the diner wall climbed over the halfway mark, Jax called the rotation and made the risk play plain. 2 stay 2 sleep, he said. We start before the open sign breathes. If a serpent parks and performs patience, you log it like a wound that refuses to bleed. If a hand reaches you, call it in before you move, and you film like you want your grandchildren to win arguments with it. The goal is daylight on paper, not bruises in the morning. Rico volunteered with a shrug that said he preferred boredom over regret. Big Mike did not volunteer. But he did not shift. Staying is a language he speaks by not moving. Leon hesitated a breath, and then accepted the rest, because command is not a reward. It is a chore you take. Turns carrying. Jax let himself cross the lot once, and study the room the way you study a painting whose painter you want to protect. Kesha had her hands flat on the counter, as if asking the wood to be a shoreline. Tommy stayed with the bat, and the stance of a man who would not be thanked for choosing right. Jax touched the edge of his helmet without turning it into a salute. She did not see. Good! This was not for her. This was for the record and for the night. He swung onto the saddle, and the machine rose beneath him in the same steady heart it had always given. He gave the last plain sentence because sometimes words keep hands honest. Paper only, boys. The serpent wants the loud version. He does not get to choose our language. They nodded, and the station turned empty again. as if no one had ever breathed under that roof. Jax pulled out with Leon beside him and took the first gears quiet. The mirror showed the diner shrinking and holding as if distance were a trick. The bell inside the glass rang once, and then became only a story the room kept for itself. Rain left a clean taste on his teeth. In his pocket, the notebook felt like a small spine. The chapter had asked for restraint and proof, and a willingness to let disrespect perform itself without earning the answer it wanted. He had given the night that much. The next hours would ask for a map, and the hum of a small drone and rows of numbers that escort warrants from desks to doors. Behind them, the three red mouths did not bite, not yet. They had shown patience, and a private ritual meant to intimidate. Jax filed the ritual where rituals go when men believe in them too much. He held on to time. He held on to the vow as action rather than feeling. He held on to the faces of his crew, and to the bat at a cook's leg, and to a woman touching a card through cloth. He carried only what he could turn into morning, and left the rest in the rain to wash away. Morning came steel-colored and close, the rain thinning to a hush that polished the alley and made the shop smell like wet dust and burnt coffee. Jax keyed the side door of Ironhawk's auto and woke the lights one by one until the office showed its honest bones. Counter, scarred desk, county map on the wall, with circles from last night, like bruises that had decided to hold their shape. He shrugged out of leather that remembered midnight and hung it on his hook. Leon was already in the left-leaning chair with a hood up and blue glow on his face. A mug steamed beside his elbow. Two machines sat shoulder to shoulder, the old tower that never touched the net and the younger laptop that fetched things and came home. On the screen were two folders named for what the day would need. Receipts, maps. Leon did not look up. He tapped a key, then another, and let the page settle before he spoke. Morrison sent something, he said. Came before the building remembered it had a morning. He put it where it would not look carried. Jax stepped close. The file opened with the weight of law and the cowardice of black bars. He read the heading the way a man reads a bend in the road in low light. Petition for protection. The name beside applicant was not last night's name. It was the one she had buried under caution and quiet. Kesha Brooks. The order had lived a year and then died, because fear does not move on the calendar the court prefers. Jax did not speak. His hand closed once, and then flattened on the desk. He felt the slick of his own palm and wiped it on his jeans. This paper is supposed to be the wall, he thought. He walked through it. The printed lines spoke in the weatherproof voice systems used for pain. The voice was honest, and also not enough. The paper tried to keep rain out. The bruise on a wrist said the roof still leaked. Leon clicked to the change of name petition. A mother's maiden name lifted like a bridge built across a river at night. The reason line wore the quiet phrase, personal safety. A new address inside the county, but far enough from the old life that casual harm would have to work to find her. Jax saw the page and saw the night layered over it, saw the sleeve climb, the ring of yellowed purple, the cuff of fear when a hand goes, where a hand has no right to live. The file was not history. It was a scar. She had learned to cover it with ink and procedure, and he had learned to read it under the ink anyway. His breath came shallow, and he made it longer on purpose. Paper is not a shelter until you give it a roof made of action. Rico came in with rain on his shoulders and a bag that smelled like butter and sugar. Big Mike followed with a jacket that could have been a tent and a face that could have been a door. Rico set the bag down and leaned over Leon's shoulder until the screen painted one cheek blue. "Let me guess," he said. "A whole lot of almost and a few lines that pretend to be walls. Enough to tell a story, and not enough to lock a door." Leon said, "But the bones are there." Jax put his palm on the desk and kept his voice in the register he saved for work orders that mattered. We are done thinking this is about one alley for one night. He is not going to quit because a piece of paper failed to hold him before. He will stop because the paper we send has a spine, timestamps and numbers and roots. We protect her by making him irrelevant. That is the only language left that the night will respect. He let it sit in the room long enough to feel like a choice and not just a sentence. Then he made it a plan. The tools made the stakes visible in his own mouth as he said them, a drone with silent blades that could be heard if the wind changed wrong, a thermal camera that could paint heat on a screen and call it proof, and also could draw attention if a guard lifted his eyes, lenses that bit light without consent. If they were seen, they would not just get hit, they could be cited for stepping too close to a fence line. The law loved more than it loved the truth. Paper over punch was not softer, it was more dangerous and slower, and it asked them to hold their hands down while their blood learned patience. Leon set the satellite view of the city on the wall monitor and pulled the map window on the laptop to match it. He did not narrate the long search. He drew one dotted line from the garage in the industrial strip to a storage facility to a paint shop near the county edge. Then he tapped a key, and the monitor filled with a single clear line of text. Registered agent. The letters said, V. Malaria. The room went quiet in the way rooms do when a thing gets named. There it is, Riku said, one hand behind all three doors. Big Mike took up a yellow pad and wrote the date in square letters that refused to slant. He printed chain of custody and drew 4 boxes under it, like steps you cannot skip. What the thing is, who saw it, when, and where. How it moved to the law without getting dirty. Jax felt the thought cross his face and did not hide it. The paper is the weapon, and also the risk. We will not cross a fence line. We will not give a lawyer a word he can spin like a wrench. We gather and we timestamp and we keep chain. No hero shots. No heat for its own sake. We need proof of parts that move and names that change and a route that repeats. We send the first packet before sundown. One to Morrison where it will be read in the tone of procedure. One to the desk that likes tips more than credit. We keep her name off every page. Leon slid a small quadcopter from a drawer. It sat in his palm like a toy and did not feel like one. He clicked in a battery until the tiny lights turned green. Silent at a certain height, he said softly. Not silent if we get stupid with wind and angles. If they have motion on the roofline, your hands need to be part of the roof. Rico brought up a public image from the paint shop site. Just a glossy frame a customer could love. He rolled contrast, and the blurred edge of stamped metal resolved into a little run of letters that would rather have stayed asleep. The number looked like a confession under a lamp. The things men brag about, he said. Pride is a bolt you can take out with your fingers if the first thread was wrong. Big Mike said. He wrote the number with clean patience. Then he added a line beneath it. Photo source public. Capture time. He wrote the time that lived on the screen while it still lived in his eyes, and boxed it in. Jax turned back to the map and pulled a thin marker from a mug, feeling the cheap plastic bite his fingers. Arrows ran between circles like stitches closing a wound. The tips were small because loud maps make men lie to themselves. He kept the explanation spare. You two, he said to Leon and Big Mike, you are the roof at the warehouse. Heat every half minute, flat and still. Rico, you are paint. Color and numbers if numbers show. I take the strip and the storage gate, plates that think they are too busy to be noticed. Every time we see a truck move from one circle to another, we catch the minute and the metal and the direction. And we do not forget the sky's weather when we do it. The page will need the air around the proof. Leon nodded and opened a blank grid. Rico flexed 2 fingers like a man warming a piano. Big Mike tore a clean sheet and printed the name of the cook who had stood with a bat. He boxed it and slid it under the top page, where it would not be the first thing a stranger saw. "We owe him better than a mention," Leon said. "We do," Jack said. "A man who risked his kitchen for her. The paper has to protect him too. Note that he stood between harm and a worker with the bat low and visible. If we ever need him to speak, we ask gentle, and we do not insist. He has already done enough." Jax looked down at the protective order again. At the line where the court once believed a signature could stand between a woman and a man who thought ownership counted as love. The page made his knuckles itch. He rubbed the edge of his thumb over the paper as if he could warm it into strength. This is where the system failed. He thought, not in writing it, but in thinking the writing would be enough. So we give the writing bones and heat and numbers. We make a clock testify. He spoke the vow again, and this time did not let it come out gentle. We protect her by making him irrelevant. That is not a phrase, that is the order. It is harder than fighting him in his parking lot. It is slower. It is riskier. It asks you to let insult perform itself without answering in its language. We choose that anyway. The room took the charge like a battery takes the wall. Leon sealed the drone battery with a click. Rico checked the small camera he wore like a pocket mirror. Big Mike tucked the pad inside his jacket as if it were a rib. "One more thing," Jax said. "If we are seen, we are not just dealing with fists. We are dealing with trespass and complaints and men who know how to call a patrol car faster than we can explain a good deed. We will not give them that. We will not step where we do not belong. We will use height and distance and light and patience. If it goes wrong, we fall back and we let the paper we already have do the first work." Leon thumbed the drone, and the small motors whispered. He killed it and cradled the body like a living thing. "Ready," he said. Rico slid a pastry across the desk without looking away from the grid. "Eat so your hands do not shake near glass." Jax took it and chewed and tasted sugar and a long night. He swallowed and pulled his jacket back on. The leather was colder now and cleaner, as if the rain had rinsed the rash out of it. He crossed to the map and touched one fingertip to each circle, the way you check a knot. The garage in the strip where respectability wore a mask with a price tag. The warehouse that called itself empty and hummed after midnight. The paint shop that baked names off frames and put new ones on. 3 doors, 1 hand. He drew a breath and gave the day its last sentence before motion. "We will not be loud first. We will be right first. And we will make the clock ours." They stepped into the alley. The rain had thinned to a sift, enough to make every sound cleaner. The street breathed. The city stretched like a back that had slept wrong and decided to forgive the bed. Leon and Big Mike swung toward the warehouse district with the small machine wrapped in a towel like a contraband bird. Rico headed for the county line where heat would be legal, and also telling. Jax turned his front wheel toward the strip where a placard with a serpent smiled like a dare. He paused with the engine off long enough to listen to the shop hum and the rain talk. Paper is threat, he thought. Paper is promise. Paper is risk. We will make it enough. He thumbed the starter, and the bike answered as it always did. A steady heart that respected the key. On his way out, he dialed the pace to the kind that would not make a cop curious. He passed a laundromat and a church, and a school where the sign out front told parents about picture day and bake sales, and nothing about the kinds of fear that live just past the parking lot line. He let the city be ordinary in his eyes for a block, so he would not forget what he was doing this for. People who deserve to drink coffee without watching doors. The first stop would be the strip. Plates, faces neutral, under morning light, a log that would carry more weight than any punch he could have thrown last night. Then he would swing to the storage gate and stand where the camera on the corner could not name him trespasser and catch the trucks that had forgotten citizens look up. He would finish by making sure the road between the warehouse and the shop lived on paper as something other than rumor. He took the turn, and the industrial buildings rose like gray teeth. He rolled off the throttle and felt the old heat ask for a different day. He said no. The vow steadied the bars. Behind him, in a quiet office, a map with dotted lines held a name in block letters that matched 3 deeds. On the desk, a restraining order waited like a warning that had done its best. Under the top sheet, the cook's name sat in a neat box, protected for now by nothing but the intent of men who had chosen a slower fight. Jax let the rain mark his visor and counted the small beats between wiper passes. He felt the danger in the work grow teeth as the daylight strengthened. They would be seen if they were careless. They would be accused if they were unlucky. They would be tested by patience either way. He breathed and let the engine carry the choice forward. He had learned to leave a room's panic where it belonged and carry only the part he could turn into action. Today the action looked like paper. Today the paper looked like a weapon with a handle. He set his hand on it and rode. The rain thinned to a skin you could breathe through, and the strip wore its weekday face, roll-up doors half raised, forklifts humming, men in safety vests moving with clipboards and coffee, as if the world were regular. Jax set his bike 2 shops down from the Serpent garage and became a man waiting on a parts delivery with the patience of bills, chin tucked, hands bare, eyes moving like a clock that knows what minutes cost. He did not stare at the sign. He watched the gaps, the alley mouth where a box truck might slide sideways, the side door that promised nothing and kept that promise. When the first truck nosed off the boulevard, he did not lift his phone high. He turned his shoulder like a man easing a bad back, and the lens bit 2 quiet truths. A plate, a cheap magnetic logo on the door that could peel off before court if someone did not trap it while it still believed itself. He logged both in the pocket notebook with a weather line the way a mechanic writes torque. Air wet, light scattered, smell of cutting oil. The truck ignored the front bay and took the alley. Jax counted slow, giving sound a chance to talk. A back door complained. An impact wrench barked and laughed once. He kept his face bored and his stance ordinary, so the glass would read him as something a room can ignore. Leon's voice drifted in low on the personal channel. Roof set. Wind is a whisper. Little bird ready. Your height. Your rules. Jack said, if a guard looks up, you become sky. Copy. Leon answered, and his words flattened. The sound of a man lying on tar. Big Mike said nothing. He saved breath. For when breath might matter. Across the county line, Rico walked the paint shop's edge. Like a man comparing prices, he let a foreman see a cap pulled low and an open smile. He lifted his phone only for the kind of photographs motorheads take for love alone. A frame on a rolling stand, clear coat still shy. In the gloss, a ghost of stamped letters whispered through. He sent the still across the ether. Jax tucked it into the place in his mind where proof waits until paper carries it. A second truck, drifted by the strip, chose the same alley, wore a different plate, and the same peelable brand. He wrote the plate and the moment as a word, kept his hand loose so the letters would not show the heat in his ribs. The vow from the shop felt heavier in daylight. Protect her by ending him without touching him. Harder than a punch, slower than a prayer. A patrol car slid past without slowing. Jax chose the story where he was a shopman waiting on filters, the kind who pays taxes and makes time for oil talk. The cruiser kept moving and let relief stay private. On the roof, Leon sent the drone. The small machine rose into ordinary air and became another piece of light. It slid past the eave into the height where motion sensors ignore gnats, and men assume the sky minds its own work. The tablet painted heat as white against black. Workers at benches, a forklift coughing warmth. In the corner, a stack of engine cores bright enough to argue with doubt, counting. Leon murmured. Rotation at the north door. We hold breaths and measure change. Big Mike lay flat inside a shadow and counted like a metronome a court reporter would trust. At each count he made a still, then whispered time and position into the recorder. Roof east, roof north, wind calm, sensor quiet. He left nothing for a defense to pretend away later. His voice built steps. Back at the strip, Jax shifted weight and let his right knee ache and be honest. The alley belched the first truck. It left lighter. He logged path. Minute. The casual wave between driver and bay. The magnetic vinyl lifted a corner for a fraction, and the fraction mattered. He stepped around his bike as if bored, caught a second plate, reflected in a storefront mirror, and thanked glass without smiling. The side door filled with Vince, scar through the brow, ownership in the stance. He let the room behind him speak through his posture, rolled a shoulder, lifted his chin toward weather like he expected the day to bow. Jax turned his chest to the boulevard and became another weekday. Vince walked past, not looking, and flicked a half-smoked cigarette. So the glowing cherry landed an inch from Jax's boot toe. The heat kissed leather. Smoke reached up with cheap sweetness and sulfur. Jax did not move the boot. He did not flinch. He pressed the shutter a hair. One image of a lit stub at the edge of his toe. A gesture of petty harm offered and refused. Behavior logged. Aggression recorded. Restraint intact. Vince did not turn. He ground the stub under his heel and went inside. The door shut like a lid on a box that still made noise. Rico's whisper returned, thinner now. Got the number in the gloss, and then the floor got company. A big man with a greasy thumb walked out, asking about turnaround. Rico's laugh turned friendly in an instant. A mask with good teeth. He kept the phone low with his thumb hovering over delete like a safety. He said he was pricing a repaint on a cousin's wreck. Flash almost fired. One slip and the whole day would go loud. The foreman bragged about same-day work and walked away to shout at a kid. Rico breathed and kept the shot, and tossed a second harmless photo of nothing to cool the moment. He moved on at an ordinary pace, and only then let his shoulders loosen. Harvest it, but do not feed it. Jack said, brag is a language. The warehouse guard at the north corner did not stroll this time. He paused, his flashlight beam knifed across gravel, climbed the wall, and settled on the roofline vent, where Leon had tucked himself thin. The light held. Jax heard Big Mike's quiet intake over the line like a door deciding whether to swing. Then the tablet in Leon's hands hiccuped and the feed went to black with 2 words across the screen. Connection lost. For a breath there was nothing but the roof wind and the guard's slow turning light. Leon kept still enough to hurt. Big Mike shifted his bulk to widen a shadow, his body angled to keep metal from catching a stray gleam. The beam slid over sheet and ducked, stalled at the vent again, then moved on. The guard grunted, tapped the housing twice with his knuckles, and kept walking. Leon eased the drone a palm's width sideways by sound alone, and coaxed the signal back until the tablet flickered, and the heat returned. They had lost a sliver of time and a full measure of nerve. We lost a half-minute of thermal, Leon said. We keep counting. We do not rush what the clock can still give. Copy, Jack said, and swallowed the taste of metal his mouth had chosen. The strip exhaled lunch. Forklifts beeped compliance. A third truck arrived, faked a front turn, slipped to the alley, and vanished. Jax wrote it clean, light stronger, air warmer, same logo, different plate. He watched the shop window without looking at it. A serpent patch came out to smoke and did not see him. Because his body had learned how to be furniture, near the paint shop, Rico brushed a stray clear-coat flake from his sleeve and felt the kid's eyes on him. The kid asked who he rode with in a voice trying to borrow weight. Rico's grin was gentle. He said he rode with a guy named Rent and a guy named Grocery, and he asked if they ever offered coffee to people who waited. The kid laughed and forgot the question as the foreman barked his name. Rico drifted away, a polite shadow with an ordinary phone. On the roof, Leon's drone caught a door swing wide and a pallet move with frames squared like bones. He took stills in a measured rhythm. The guard came back earlier than expected and aimed a laser rangefinder at the parapet. Red dots skittering near the vent seam. Leon killed the drone lights and pressed the body against metal with 2 fingers. Big Mike slid his arm over the vent lip, a quiet shield, as if his forearm could be a wall for a machine. The dot held, then dropped. The guard wrote something on a clipboard and moved on. Leon let air back into his chest. Back at the strip, the alley delivered the first truck back into traffic. The bed rode quiet and suspiciously empty. Jax logged the minute, and the path and the board wave again. He felt the test settle deeper. Paper over punch was not mercy. It was nerves stretched across hours. He closed the notebook, opened it, wrote one more line he would want later. Driver wore a cap with a stitched bird. Habitual wave left hand. Hearts beat fast under gray weather without showing themselves. He did not push them into night. Not yet. He called the midday break and took the long loop to the shop to let heat drain without losing momentum. The office smelled like coffee and damp carpet. Leon cabled the tablet, and files moved with a hum that sounded like modest victory. Big Mike rewound the recorder, checked the cadence, wrote file names with square letters. Rico air-dropped images from a phone that never kept anything, then wiped the screen with a sleeve like a ritual. Jack stood with both palms on scarred wood and built the packet out of ordinary, a summary that told only what a stranger could verify with eyes. Arrival by alley. Departure lighter. Plates matched across locations within 1 hour, written as words, so a tired clerk could read them out loud. Guard rotation logged by stills. Heat signatures inside a building the county called vacant. Frame at paint shop with a prior number visible in reflection. Chain of custody beneath like a spine. Who saw it? Where? When? How it moved to law without touching anything dirty. He read it once for sound. It held. He sent it to the detective's quiet door and to the desk that prefers tips to fame. No flourish. Proof first. Then he looked at the map, at the restraining order with its tired edges, at the neat box with Tommy's full name under a clean sheet. He gave the room a sentence that could carry the weight. Second sweep, he said. We catch dusk when men get lazy. We log patience as pressure. We leave our hands down and our cameras up. If any of you spill into a fight, you buy him the win he won. They moved again. Afternoon gathered itself. The warehouse steadied into the same heat shapes. The paint shop baked color over history. The strip breathed shift, change, and fries. At the storage gate, Jax caught the same box truck waiting on the keypad and wrote the small math of its hesitation. A young serpent patch rolled past slow, visor lifted enough to show a jaw set too tight. No turn back. Threat ambient, not act. He wrote ambient anyway, because absence of teeth is sometimes only the mouth taking time. He called it as the streetlights blinked on and pigeons chose ledges. Back at the shop, they built the dusk packet faster, because the day had taught their hands the shape. When the second send went, the room felt like a lung at the top of stairs. Jack stepped into the alley and let cooler air take sweat. Somewhere a siren drew a thin line through blue. His phone showed a reply with no name. Received. moving. He let relief stay small and private. He rode past the diner on purpose and did not stop. The bell moved. For a family. Warm light. Coffee that tried now. He pictured a card still living in a pocket like a small bone, and a bat leaning on a wall like a quiet witness. The threat had not left. It had been asked to perform in daylight. Paper had grown teeth without raising a fist. He carried only what he could turn into morning and left the rest in the rain to finish washing away. The bike took him into the hour when the sky forgets its color, and he wore restraint around his ribs, like armor that had earned the right to be heavy. Dusk settled into the kind of blue that sharpens edges and makes reflections bolder than faces. The shop lights hummed like they were saving breath. On the scarred desk, the packets sat in their quiet order. Steels trimmed, logs labeled in square letters that did not lean. The evidence bags sealed and initialed. Jax kept one palm on the plastic, as if taking a pulse. The earlier message had been a pebble on metal received and moving. He needed a heavier sentence now, something that changed the room. He sent them back into the city like stitches. Rico to the back street behind Kesha's building. Leon floating with the small drone asleep in a glove box. Big Mike to the diner with a book he did not need to understand. Jax took the long loop that let his hands remember landmarks older than fear. The Serpent garage showed a door cracked just enough to feel like a lie. He let it slide past without giving the crack a meaning. The diner held its warm square like a lantern. Through glass, he saw Big Mike in the back booth, a cup in front of him, the book open like a prop for patience. Tommy poured and cleaned with the steadiness of someone who had chosen decency long ago. Kesha moved through the aisles, quicker now, a rhythm that belonged to her. The left leg still guarded sometimes, but the protection looked voluntary, not dictated by pain. Jax did not ring the bell. He set his bike across the street and let the idol sit low. He watched as a painter watches light move across a wall he intends to keep. The phone ticked against his ribs once and he read a line without smiling. Movement confirmed, additional units requested. He put the line back into his pocket and into his breath. Leon came in soft over the private channel. Warehouse heat bright one moment and then less bright the next. Guards on the north walk doubled. The clock is talking to them. He paused, listening past himself. A beat later, his voice landed with detail. The thermal just went cold on the corner bay. That is not shut down. That is doors opening to night air. The heat signature thinned and broke into moving pieces. That looks like entry by people who rehearse. Rico's whisper carried the back street. A sedan with bad tint circled once, and then found a reason to leave. Third floor curtain lifted and fell. She is learning what safe watching can be. Traffic turned the corner, and then something heavier arrived. The red serpent on a tank shone like a mouth. Vince. He rolled into the lot without hurry and set the bike broadside across the diner door so the path in and out became an argument. He took off his helmet as if the sky owed him the view. The scar through his brow held old weather. He saw Big Mike first, and then took in the comfort of the room and resented it. Tommy stepped from behind the counter a half pace, and then stopped because protocol and survival argued, and he had been alive long enough to respect both. Kesha paused with a pot in her hand and let it rest on a table edge without spilling. She looked at the door, and then at the 2 feet of chrome blocking it, and then at Big Mike, and kept breathing. Jax did not move. He lifted the phone a fraction and let the lens see the shape of the obstruction and the face that planted it. He wrote the minute in his head as a word, and pressed it into memory the way you press a seal into wax. Vince walked to the glass and looked through, not at the room, not at Tommy, But at Big Mike, who sat without widening his shoulders, Vince raised one fist slow, like a promise that had not decided what it wanted to be. He held it at chest height and let the knuckles mean harm, not yet delivered. He wanted someone to choose the language he understood. Jax did not give it to him. He kept his chest square to the street, and his face neutral, and his eyes on the reflection of the reflection, the way you watch a fuse without becoming the burn. He could smell the old tobacco on Vince's jacket through a draft that found him. He held the camera steady, and the temper steadier. The private line cracked alive. Leon, now with urgency, kept flat. Second set of doors at the warehouse are wrong in a way that means warrants. Two silhouettes inside went to the floor in the shape that means compliance. The thermal dropped in slabs, and then steadied at the outline of people who do not want to run. He shifted angles and added the immediate consequence he knew Jax needed. Units are loading sealed crates onto evidence dollies. They are calling weights out loud. It is happening. Rico added from the edge of the paint shop where he had drifted because instinct liked symmetry. Bay lights at the paint shop just went full bright for nobody. That is the color of inspection. Someone is photographing frames with a measuring stick in the shot. The stick has numbers in inches and a badge tag close to it. The kind of picture that makes juries breathe slower. The sirens did not stay distant this time. Their first crest bled into the diner block, like a tide that had remembered the map. The sound came from the warehouse direction and also from the county line, and also from a place near the storage units where men forget cameras exist until the day they do not. Light color reached the underside of the cloud deck. It looked like weather finally choosing a side. Inside the diner, Vince's fist stuttered. His jaw clicked. He heard the noise, the way a man hears a verdict through a door. For a beat, he tried to keep the pose, tried to hold the fist at the height where fear can hang, and the attempt shook. He lowered it because there was not a language left that would reward keeping it raised. He turned toward the blocked door and moved to swing a leg over the bike, but did not start it. He wanted to leave on his terms. He saw Jax then, finally, because refusal can glow if you stare at a room too long. The old dare twitched at the corner of his mouth and faded. Jax spoke only to the line the Hawks shared. We hold no hands. If he escalates, we take the heat away from the door and give it to the curb for the law to pick up. Big Mike did not stand. He turned one page of the book slow. Tommy wiped a circle into the counter and left the clean ring as a kind of patient halo. Kesha set the coffee pot down and rested her hand near her apron pocket where a small card lived like a bone. Leon again, steady now. The warehouse line is stacking evidence in numbered bins. The storage units are open like mouths with nothing useful to say. Paint shop manager is answering questions with his hands open to show he knows nothing and everything. It is moving. Jax watched Vince measure the room for one last trick. There was not one. The sirens declared that tricks had lost their place. Vince pulled the bike back just enough to clear the threshold. The bell over the door chimed with an honest sound as a couple pushed in and blinked at the brightness. At the smell of butter and coffee, they did not know what had almost been a show. Kesha stepped from the counter to greet them, and in that small distance the left leg did not tell a lie. The micro-hesitation that had lived there since the first night was gone. Her body found its proper rhythm because fear had been told to leave. She moved like someone who had decided to take her own time back. Jax felt something in his ribs expand and settle. Not triumph, not relief. A steadier thing that comes when a pattern corrects. She took the order, 2 coffees and pie, and then looked past the couple toward Big Mike. He closed the book and placed a bill that said "Thank you" without the words. He rose with care, the way big men do when they wish not to startle a room. And when he passed Kesha, she lifted a hand to her apron pocket and touched the card through the cloth. It was a private salute and a receipt for a promise kept. She set the pot down, and her steps back to the counter had the small music of ownership. Vince straddled the bike and did not look at anyone. He fired the engine, and for a moment he revved higher than manners. Ask. And then a cruiser slid into the lot without panic. Two officers inside, reading the scene with field calm. Vince lowered the throttle because even pride understands a uniform when the night has turned. The officers did not draw noise out of the air. One rolled a window and said something Jax could not hear and did not need to. Vince looked at the space where his fist had tried to be a language, and then at the open doorway, and then somewhere far off where the warehouse used to be safe. He eased the bike backward without style and let the cruiser take the path he had hoped to own. The red serpent on the tank looked tired in the diner light. Jax stayed still. He did not collect victory with his face. He logged the final detail he would someday need when memory tried to be generous. He left without defiance. He left because noise made no sense anymore. Leon filled in the last bar of the measure. Paint shop boxed 3 frames with sticks and tags and carried them like breakable truth. Warehouse is cold now except for the heat of people talking. Storage manager is on a phone that does not help him. The paper walk. Rico added one soft cord from the back street. 3rd floor window open. Curtain tied once to the side. The air went through the room like permission. Big Mike crossed the lot and paused by Jax's front wheel. He did not say good job. He let his eyebrows ask, and Jax nodded once. They held the quiet, the way men hold a tool they respect. Tommy waved at them both as if nothing had happened and as if everything had happened, which was also true. Kesha stepped out from behind the counter for a breath and stood where the bell could have kissed her shoulder. She glanced toward the bike row across the street and then down at her pocket again. The card beneath her fingers, a small rectangle of metal and promise. When she turned back to the room, there was nothing protective left in her gait. The limp was not there to explain anything. It had left with the need that trained it. Jax sat with the engine idling low and let the night adjust. The sirens thinned to a background line. The clouds let the color bleed out and left a clean dark. He spoke the vow in his head one more time so his hands would keep it later when temper rose, looking for a place to live. Protect her by making him irrelevant. He won the argument he was built for. He told himself, and felt the truth. Land he lost the war. He still thinks the fight is about fists. He took one slow loop, not for patrol but for closure, and then pointed the bike toward the shop where the sealed bag waited on clean cloth, with signatures like small bones. He carried only what he could turn into mourning, and left the rest under the honest bell and the new rhythm of a woman who no longer had to teach her body how to lie. Morning wore a pale rinse that made chrome look honest. Jax idled past the diner and let the bell's clean ring find him through glass. 2 night shift nurses slid into a booth, and a grandmother steered a boy toward pancakes with the command of someone who knew which breakfast stretched $1. Kesha moved between tables with a rhythm that now belonged only to her. He watched the left leg for the half-beat he had learned on the first day, the tiny lie a body tells. When fear owns the metronome, it was not there. The limp had never been a quirk. It had been evidence, the daily proof of a story she was forced to perform. Now the performance was over. The truth of bone and muscle walked the room without apology. He let that sight fill the space behind his ribs and then left it where it was. A vow does not ask for applause. It asks to be kept. The city's sound had shifted, not celebration, something steadier, the quiet hum of systems deciding to work. At the shop, Leon had coffee black and a list he kept turning as if the paper wanted different light. Big Mike laid the sealed evidence bag on clean cloth again, not to check a seam, only to feel the weight with his palm. Rico muted the television. The caption line crawled with unromantic words and numbers, Vehicles recovered. Multi-count charges. Ongoing. No one said Hawks, which was the point. Jax's phone buzzed and did not blink a text. It rang. He looked at the name and felt his shoulders acknowledge what a call means, that a message does not. He thumbed it open. Morrison did not clear his throat with theatrics. He sounded awake in the way men sound when sleep can wait, because something earned has finally rounded a corner. Your records are clean enough to scrub this county. Jax, that was the first sentence. You gave her the spine to talk. We took it from there. That was the second. The rest were details that tasted like metal and relief. Grand jury will not require her. The deposition and the chain stand on their own feet. Warrants survived their first argument. Press conference later. Measured, not manic. No names outside indictments. Jax did not thank him because gratitude is a private act. He said copy because procedure deserved its due. He ended the call and let the room breathe the news without making an altar of it. Leon blew out a line of air that was almost laughter. Paper what? He said. Rico leaned his shoulder against the door jamb and let his cap fall into his hand. I prefer this kind of noise, he said. The kind you can measure. Big Mike tapped the sealed bag with one knuckle, the way a mechanic taps a part to hear if it sings true. Then he turned the chain of custody pad to a clean line and wrote a single word beside the date. Archived. He boxed it with a steady pen. They did not crowd the diner with victory. They let ordinary do the work where ordinary belong. Jax went alone, parked 1 block south, walked in like a man who had reasons to like the coffee now. The bell gave him the same hello it had given the first day, and it meant different things now. He took a stool at the counter. Tommy poured without commentary, which was its own speech. He told Kesha when she came by with the pot. No hallway ambush. No courtroom bench. They have what they need. Her eyes brightened and then steadied. She did not lean on the counter the way people do when knees go soft. She put the pot down, reached into her apron pocket, and touched the edge of the small card, the way a person touches a key to confirm reality. Then she moved again, past him toward a table with 2 coffees and a slice of pie, and her step kept the same clean cadence. The lie had left her gait. The visible proof of fear was gone, because fear had been pushed out of the room and asked to stay out. He did not stay for applause that would have embarrassed the moment. He paid for his coffee and left a bill under the saucer that would improve a knife set before the week was out. The bell rang him back into air that tasted faintly of rain and mild engine heat. On the way to the shop, the neighborhood showed its aftershocks in small, satisfying ghosts. The laundromat window reflected spin and sunlight. Instead of posturing, a young rider on a bike that used to rattle now idled with a stock muffler and observed the law like he had just discovered the point of it. Jax wrote that down with his eyes and gave the street back its quiet. He turned the corner by the service alley and saw the trophy he would not mount. A bike leaned at a crooked angle near the curb. Front wheel canted, dented tank, throwing dull light. Someone had scratched a serpent where the paint used to be, the emblem reduced to a white scar that wanted to forget its shape. The pipes were stock, the pegs worn, the taillight taped with a strip that had stopped caring. It was an orphan of a crew that had borrowed power and lost the receipt. He put one hand on the saddle a second and felt the cooled breath of last night under the vinyl, a relic they did not need to claim. A quiet testament to the noise they had refused to make. He pushed it farther off the lane, so a truck would not fold it by accident. He did not look for a name in the scratches. The emblem, defanged and hasty, said enough. Back inside, the shop smelled like motor oil and paper, and a little like sleep trying to return. Leon boxed the drone in its soft sleeves and labeled the battery with tape and a date. Because ritual is how victory behaves in rooms like this. Rico fed a stray cat half a sandwich by the bay door and texted a photo to the group because not all trophies have metal. Big Mike set the pad in the drawer and turned the key and pocketed it like a promise to himself. Morrison called back once more. Shorter this time. "Presser's done," he said. "The words you would hate were said by other people on podiums. The rest is calendar. Expect defense to leak noise. Ignore it. And Jax," he added, "you taught a thing the system forgets. Fists are fast. Paper is final." Jax listened to the line die and let the echoes settle on the scarred desk. He sat with the notebook open and wrote his own version in longhand, because ink fixes intention to bone. Protect her by making him irrelevant. Under that he wrote what protect means after the sirens thin. Keep watch without owning. Send proof without taking bows. Build rooms where a woman can talk once and not again. Afternoon softened. The television ran again with captions about seized accounts and a paint shop supervisor who had discovered cooperation. No one in the room pointed at the screen. They kept working. A woman came for an inspection sticker, and Leon did the job by the book and pointed out a brake pad she should replace soon. A man brought in a truck that hesitated on cold starts, and Big Mike listened with his head close to the fender and found a sensor that had given up trying. Rico checked tire pressures and set them right because safety begins while no one watches. Near dusk, Jax rode the long loop by the diner one more time, not to check on a threat, but to practice the habit of being near things he had promised to guard without hovering. The bell let a family in and nobody flinched. Kesha took an order with her pen moving fast and neat. On her turn back toward the pass, she caught Jax through the glass and did not wave like a movie. She pressed 2 fingers to the pocket where the card lived, then to the glass, a small gesture that stamped paid on a debt people once tried to collect from her body. He lifted 2 fingers from the bar and made the smallest reply a street can read. He rode home in light that flattened shadows. In his kitchen, he put the jacket on a chair and washed the day out of his hands, with the care of a man who knows what these hands could have done and chose not to do. He ate standing up, not because there was nowhere to sit, but because motion still felt like truth. Then he sat and read the notebook again, and closed it with a thumb inside. A habit learned from days when you might have to open it fast. Night put its weight on the city, and the city held somewhere. A cruiser drifted by without needing to prove it existed. Somewhere a young rider thought about mufflers and laws and decided he liked the quiet. Somewhere a scratched emblem went to sleep against a curb with no crew to claim it. In the morning the bell would ring again, the way bells do when they are allowed to mean welcome instead of warning. Paper would continue to walk in the background, carrying names toward consequences, doing the dull, sacred work it is meant to do. Jax would pass the glass and see a step that told the truth. He would carry only what he could turn into the next morning and leave the rest where it belonged, in drawers with dates, in sealed bags, with initials on curbs where old emblems forget their teeth. Morning settled like a steady hand on a shoulder. The shop hummed, not loud, just that honest current of lights and compressors that meant work would keep happening whether anyone applauded or not. On the scarred desk, the sealed evidence bag lay on its folded cloth. Jax touched the plastic lightly and felt the faint ridge where the inked initials had dried. Paper had walked farther than fists could run. Today it would have a face, not a podium face, a working face. The call came near mid-morning. Morrison's voice was rested steel, briefing at midday. He said, "Process only. No parading. Your presence helps. No podium. Back row." Bring the bag if you want the seal to breathe in public. Jax looked to Leon, to Rico, to Big Mike. No speeches passed between them. Leon slid a small drive into the off-net tower and checked the copies as if he were tightening lug nuts before a long road. Big Mike folded the cloth square like a flag and nodded. Rico tipped his cap forward. A key it, let's go. They took the side door of the municipal building, the door that remembered their footsteps from the deposition day. The hearing room smelled like old wood and coolant. Reporters lived in the front rows with notebooks ready. A handful of citizens sat scattered, the kind of people who read agendas and keep towns honest. Jax chose the back row with Leon on his left and Big Mike on his right. Rico lingered near the aisle, a human doorstop with good manners. Detective Sarah Chan set a laptop on the table and a flat black pouch beside it. Morrison stood with stamped forms that refused to curl. The county attorney arranged nothing into a neat pile and practiced looking unexcited. Chan opened with a line that sounded like a level set on a beam. "We will show the public outline of what is already filed," she said. "We will not discuss witnesses. We will show process." She unzipped the pouch and brought out a clear box with a numbered seal. Under the ceiling camera, the seal filled the screen. Red stump. Time. A pen wobble no forger would think to copy. Chan clicked the cradle and broke the seam with a sound, small and final. She lifted a drive that had no logo and no romance and slid it into an adapter. The first image arrived. Black field, white heat, bodies thin as lanterns. A forklift pulsing warm. A rectangle of door that cooled and reheated as air moved. Jax leaned forward, elbows on knees, and let his eyes return to the one place his body remembered without asking. The bottom right corner of the frame, where crates had sat in a neat grid for months. There, in that corner, the white was not as white, not by much, a degree thinner to the eye that knew how to listen. There it was, the truth, glowing and almost shy. The 1-degree difference Leon had logged from the rooftop, the tiny heat that did not match a cold store claim. It was a degree earned with rain on a jacket and an hour of silence. He felt the vow solidify in his ribs. You can fight with patience if you know what to measure. Chan tapped the timestamp and the angle. She held up the printed still where the red stamp kissed the lower right like a small official door locking. Then came the paint bay capture, gloss meant to hide numbers, coaxed to betray them with contrast. The ghost of a mark rose on screen. Chan laid the printed photo with a measuring stick in it under the lens. Crisp inch marks, evidence tag. A voice read the digits flat as a registry clerk. Jax watched the row of reporters lean as one creature and write. The county attorney spoke like a man who knew procedure could be music if you played it in time. Addresses tied to one registered agent. Warrants obtained and executed within the letter of the law. Assets seized according to statute. He did not use the word gang. He used the words parties and property and relief. It was better that way. It would hold longer. Chan set a small recorder under the lens and pressed play. Big Mike's count came through, quiet and exact. Roof east, roof north, wind calm, sensor quiet. Seconds, named like lumber lengths. The room did not clap. It let that care sit. Questions came and went. Will the department comment on outside assistance? Chan closed the door with a polite sentence. Anonymous tips are common and sometimes useful. What you saw today was collected within the law. Names belong to filings, not speculation. Her eyes lifted once toward the back row, and then settled back on the work. When it ended, Morrison resealed what had to travel again. The heat gun breathed over the seam. The red stamp landed square. Jax felt the thud in his knees more than his ears. On the way out, a camera crew attempted a hallway moment. Rico steered a rolling case between microphone and mouth. Big Mike raised a palm in the old sign that says "Not today" and means it. Jax kept walking. Paper had been enough. Faces would add nothing good. They found Kesha and Tommy waiting in the wide stairwell, where light from a high window fell like clean water. Kesha did not ask for drama. "How did it land?" she said. "Like numbers with teeth," Jax answered. Tommy nodded, as if that made perfect sense. And for a working man it did. Kesha smiled without apology. She reached toward the pocket that used to hold her apron card and then stopped midway. Not because she needed to check that safety existed, but because habit takes time to unlearn. The half gesture made Jax's mouth tip. You do not have to touch a key forever once the door stays open. They walked back to the diner because coffee is better than microphone. The bells spoke welcome and meant it. Service moved with that small ballet of plates and hands that happens when a room trusts itself. Big Mike sat one seat in from the back booth, leaving an open space like a breath. Leon fixed the stubborn jukebox slot with two neat motions and no comment. Rico leveled a short leg on a wobbly table with a folded napkin, the sort of fix that holds because someone cared. Near mid-afternoon, a city clerk arrived with a folder, and the cautious smile of a person whose job rarely lets them hand out good news. She did not talk like a trumpet. She looked straight at Jax and at Leon, and at the room they had helped return to ordinary. "The city needs partners we can trust," she said. "Partners who understand process." The sentence was simple, and it hit like a hand on a shoulder for thanks. She set the paper down and turned the stamp in her palm once, feeling its weight, then pressed it. The mark caught with a clean ring. "Contract awarded pending the final checks already in motion," she said, then lowered her voice for the sentence that belonged to today. "We know what you chose not to do. This is the way we say thank you." Jax signed neat. "Torque exact. No flourish." He did not take a bow. The clerk gathered the papers and slid a carbon copy across the counter. The ghost print felt honest against his fingers. Tommy exhaled like money had just decided to behave. Kesha picked up the feather keychain from beside the till and turned it in her palm until the word along the spine lay inside her lifeline. Freedom is not a speech. It is a thing you carry without looking at it all day. On his ride back to the shop, Jax took the alley by choice. The abandoned Serpent bike still leaned near the curb, front wheel canted, tank dented, emblem scraped to a pale ghost. Today there was something new. A torn slip half-tucked under the seat strap, edges wet from a shallow puddle. He lifted it with 2 fingers. A shop receipt from the Serpent garage. Paid in cash. Initials that tried to be a signature and failed. The scrawl that looked like the first letter of a name he knew too well. A fragment that said everything about a man who had lost control of both business and story. He looked up and down the empty stretch. No one watched. He eased the side cover open with a mechanic's tenderness, reached into the electrical nest, and pinched the main fuse free. He did not throw it. He did not pocket it like a trophy. He laid it on the curb, set a boot heel lightly against the plastic, and pressed. The case cracked with a small dry pop. Copper folded inside like a spent tongue. He set the broken pieces in his palm a moment, then dropped them into the drain where rain carries useless noise. The act was practical and symbolic and quiet. The bike could not roar here again. The street had the final say. Back at the shop, Leon packed the drone in soft sleeves and labeled the batteries with dates. Rico fed the stray cat half a sandwich and took a picture because some trophies purr. Big Mike wrote one last line on the chain pad and boxed it. Jax opened his notebook and wrote what the day had taught him in words without decoration. Evidence displayed. 1 degree noticed. Witness protected. City contract granted with thanks spoken aloud. Threat made not dramatic. Made irrelevant. Evening slid in, slow and clean. The television muttered captions about seized accounts and a paint boss who had learned cooperation. No one pointed. Work kept moving. A father came for an inspection sticker, and Leon did it by the book. A teacher came for a squeak in a belt, and Rico tightened it, then charged less than the time it took, which is also a way to keep a town whole. Big Mike carried the sealed bag to the drawer and locked it with a key that fit smooth. Jax made one loop by the diner because habits like that are a kind of prayer. Through the glass he saw Kesha cross the floor, carrying plates without telling her body to be careful. She caught him, pressed 2 fingers to the pocket where she kept the keychain, then to the glass, a small receipt stamped paid in full. He lifted 2 fingers in reply and let the gesture stay small. The bell chimed behind her for a couple who entered talking about normal things and did not check the door for danger. He rode home through light that flattened shadows and thought about the day, the thermal corner not as bright by 1 careful degree, the clerk speaking thanks without breaking protocol, the little fuse snapped under his boot, the copper folded like a period at the end of a long sentence. He washed the smell of the street from his hands, ate standing up because motion still felt true, then sat and copied the day into the notebook in longhand that looked like a pledge. Paper made the promise, people kept it. Fists are fast, paper is final, and when done right, paper is kind. The city vans did not arrive like a parade, they arrived like a list that had to be worked. White paint dull under cloud, engines idling steady as held breath. The procurement clerk stood with a clipboard and a calm face. Beside her, a municipal mechanic watched the bays with the look of a man measuring a bridge before driving across. Jax had the room set. Bay 3 cleared and chalked. Bay 4 hung with coiled hoses and tools nested in their slots. Against the wall, a folding table held tidy stacks of forms in the order a hand wants to reach. Intake checklist, safety sign-off, émission compliance, torque verification. He had printed them the night before and squared the corners, because paper deserves respect if you want it to hold. We run by the book, he told the city man, not loud. Plate matches the VIN. Assignment log matches the plate. Dash and odometer. Photograph. Service lights recorded. Whole vehicle documented left and right for a baseline. The man nodded like a weight shifting off his spine. He had lived years where favors were called fixes. He wanted bolts. The first van told the truth about a hard life. Brakes pulled left under a gentle pedal. The belt chirped at idle like a small animal behind a wall. Leon wrote the note in block letters and recorded the sound with his phone held steady. Big Mike set the torque wrench on the first lug and spoke the number under his breath, the way some men say prayers. Then he clicked and crossed the star and clicked again, steady as a metronome that refuses to lie. Chain is not only for evidence, Jax said to the city man, showing the accordion binder he had built. Intake. Findings. Fix. Return. Signatures. A clean path from hand to hand. Chain keeps trust from leaking. By mid-morning the curb looked different. Fresh stickers blinked from windshields. Wipers wiped without streaks. Idle sat straight. The municipal mechanic shook Jax's hand with gratitude that tried to stay professional. You are about to make enemies at the yard, he said, and then he smiled like that was a compliment, which it was. Enemies were already trying to find new shapes. 3 men came up the block from the old industrial strip. Jackets plain, hands in pockets, no patches, no colors. The lead had a jaw like a toolbox latched hard. The 2 behind him carried that jumpy readiness worn by people who have made a habit of leaving fast. We are looking for work, the lead said. He did not angle for sympathy. He looked tired just above the cheekbones. "We accept applications," Jax answered. He pointed to the whiteboard where Leon had written terms days ago without flourish. No open warrants, no theft convictions involving tools or vehicles, any probation disclosed to our lawyer and to the city, clean on the test to start, and clean on random to stay. Training probation for a month with written checklists. Jax watched the words move across the men's faces and saw where pride flinched and where pride felt grateful. "Name is Felix," the lead said. "Mounted tires at the Serpent shop. Went to night cleanup when the heat arrived. I have a kid. I am done being clever about bad choices." Jax believed half and rented the rest for review. "Fill the form," he said. "If you lie, we will find it. If you do not lie, we will train you to a standard that keeps strangers alive in traffic." Felix signed in a hand that tried to look steady, and almost did. One of the younger men lifted his chin like a small dare. "No colors here," he offered, preemptive and cheap. Leon did not smile. "No colors," he agreed, "only time and torque." They were halfway through a brake job when the legal blade showed up wearing a suit. A sedan stopped short, and a man stepped out with a folder and a smile like a threat, wrapped in courtesy. "I represent a party affected by your recent activities," he said to Jax. The tone was practiced weariness, designed to push people off balance. "I believe your organization is engaged in a sustained campaign of intimidation and conspiracy against my client." He let the words sit like bait. Jax did not take the hook. He turned a single page from the binder and laid it flat on the van's hood. "My organization is engaged in torque verification and municipal maintenance," he said. "As per this signed document and the contract posted on the city portal," he slid another sheet beside it with calm fingers. "Intake forms. Chain of custody for the records law enforcement requested and received. Harassment questions belong with the court that issued the warrants you already know about. Any further requests for names or records must be served and will travel through counsel." The lawyer tried a smirk sharpened to a point. "Your refusal will be noted," he said, and lifted the folder like it weighed more than paper. Jax tapped the header line with one knuckle. A quiet gavel. "So will your fishing, and you are standing where a city vehicle is about to move. Please step behind the tape." It was not a sneer. It was a specification. The lawyer hesitated and then obeyed, because even men who sell trouble understand that engines ignore posture. He left the way a wind leaves. No door slam, no look back, just a promise to annoy someone else. Inside Bay 5, Big Mike had the new men around a mounted wheel. He spoke with the patience of a man who had taught himself to stay. "I see a man who learned how to leave," he told Felix without heat. "Good. Now, learn how to stay. We torque to spec, not to anger. That is the difference between a shop and a mistake." He guided the wrench back on, let Felix feel the click at the right pound, then made him do it again with eyes closed. So memory would live in his hands, and not just in his head. They did not hold speeches about second chances. They drew lines on the floor and asked men to stand inside them. That is what a second chance actually is. Kesha arrived between the lunch rush and the quiet count that follows. A tray of coffee, a bag of warm biscuits smelling like butter, and time. She set them on the intake table like she had always been allowed behind the line, which was true now. She teased Leon about feeding city workers on her dime. Leon lifted a brow and said, "The printers are my people now, which regrettably makes me responsible for their morale." She laughed and turned to Jax. "Chan called," she said, soft. "A plea is in the air, not the worst one, enough to prove the rain was worth it." Tommy leaned in at the bay door with a grin and a service ticket. "Oil later," he said. Rico wrote it on the board at the rate they charge strangers. Tommy put a palm on the counter and looked at Jax with the steadiness of a man in a kitchen during a dinner rush. The old name is gone, he said. You gave this street a new name to believe in. Thanks for the oil change. Jax did not deflect the words. He let the thanks land where it wanted and nodded once. A motion that meant we heard you and we will keep earning it. By late afternoon, the vans queued straight as soldiers and left with engines that sounded like patients. The municipal mechanic returned with 2 colleagues and a stack of past work orders that read like a history of neglect. Big Mike showed them the star pattern on a wheel. Click and cross, the rhythm you teach your body, so it has something honest to do. One of the city men said this is how it is supposed to feel, and seemed surprised to hear himself say it. The day thinned toward evening. Jack stepped back 3 paces from the shop front to see the whole. Fresh stickers, correct pressures, clean forms in ordered stacks. In Bay 5, the new men pushed the floor machine slow and true, not pretending it was a toy, not skipping corners. Jax watched for the small cheat, the quiet smear you miss when you hurry. He did not see it. He would look again tomorrow because that is how standards stay alive. He walked the long block to the diner because the bell was part of the new order now. The room smelled like onions going sweet in butter and coffee that did not apologize. Kesha crossed the floor with the step that no longer lied for fear. The left leg kept the right leg's time. Normal had returned, and normal was the point. A local paper lay folded near the register. The headline did not crow. City partners begin fleet maintenance under new contract. It said, a smaller line named a jobs program placing 3 workers from a motorcycle group into training slots. No redemption sermon, just onboarding, supervision, background checks. Jax liked the word onboarding. It sounded like a ramp that has a posted weight and does not collapse. He took a stool. Tommy slid a plate without asking. Because some habits are trust-shaped. Kesha poured and rested her palm on the counter with the quiet pleasure of standing still. Felix came in for a coffee on break, paid cash, said, see you tomorrow without looking to the door for trouble. People can change when the room tells them the rules and keeps them, Kesha said, and her smile did not ask permission from anything. On his way back to the shop, Jax called Morrison, not for news, just to put a sound in the air that matched the day. We had a visitor fishing with words like intimidation and conspiracy. He said, they will splash in every puddle until the court shuts the hydrant. Morrison answered, keep your chain tight and your names quiet. Then he added, you built a room where procedure can be brave. Do not move out of it. Jax pocketed the phone. The compressors inside the bay thumped once and settled into their hum. He touched the door jamb with 2 fingers, the way a person salutes a threshold that has earned respect. At the desk he opened the notebook and wrote what mattered in plain lines. Von Sein, standards taught, lawyer left with nothing. Felix learned the click that saves lives. Tommy named the street's new belief. Night did not press. It arrived evenly, like a curtain that slides on a rail that has been cleaned. Somewhere a clerk queued invoices. Somewhere a red stamp dried sharp. In the drawer behind him, the sealed bag slept on cloth. Story complete. At the diner, the bell rang for a couple talking about school forms and shifts, and Kesha moved to meet them at a normal speed. Jax took the long breath that comes when a plan leaves your hands and becomes the way a place runs. He shut the lights one bank at a time and the darkness felt earned. Morning opened soft, the kind of light that turns chrome honest and makes scrubbed wood glow like it remembers kindness. The bell above the door gave its clear note. and the room answered with the discipline of a place that had learned to breathe. Coffee hissed a gentle promise. The grill took butter and made it shine. The floor held a quiet sheen from corners outward, not the other way around. Kesha pinned her hair, tied the apron, and stood one breath behind the counter to take stock. Booths wiped, jukebox obedient, sugar lids seated. Not rattling, a feather keychain rested in the little glass display near the register. Brushed silver catching the day. She did not need to touch it to be sure it was there. The knowing lived in her shoulders now, in the ease of standing, without calculating exits. Tommy came through the swing door with a pan of biscuits, steam rhyming the air with flour and butter. He set the tray down and leaned a hip on the counter. Full house by mid-morning, he said. City crews are already arguing about who gets the corner booth, like it is policy. Let them fight for coffee, she said, smiling. Better that than fighting for safety. The first customers were a grandmother and a boy with a backpack patched by careful hands. Kesha poured with her right steady and her left relaxed. The cup filled, not a drop spilled, and she felt a flicker of gratitude for the boredom of a body telling only ordinary truths. Her hand drifted once toward the apron pocket where she used to keep a card. Habit, not need. She let the hand fall. Outside, a city van idled smooth by the curb, inspection sticker winking. Across the street, the shop doors were rolled up. Big Mike stood in a bay beside Felix, his palms open as he let the younger man hear the click for himself. Leon passed with a clipboard, checking boxes without drama. Rico set a cat bowl under the shade of stacked tires and tried to pretend he had done nothing tender. The street looked like a machine idling right. The bell chimed again. Jax entered the way he always did, taking no more room than required, bringing no weather with him. He took the end stool, set his gloves flat, fingertips aligned as if small order invited larger kinds. He met her eyes for a heartbeat, and then let them go. That refusal to turn a rescue into an orbit was a thing she had come to trust. She filled his cup, and the one beside it. Because ordinary liked to move in pairs, he nodded once, the wordless thank you that lived well here. A paper lay folded near the register. Headlines, written in the language she had learned to prefer, indictments moving on schedule. Sentencing calendars set, city contracts executed to specification. A small paragraph about a jobs program, placing trainees under supervision at a licensed shop. No trumpet words, just hours logged, evaluations scheduled, outcomes measured. She had come to love that kind of grammar. It kept promises without needing applause. Near late morning, the door opened for the procurement clerk. She had a box with a pie and a folder with a seal, and the calm of a person who respects stamps and reasons. She ordered a slice first, which made Kesha like her more, and then she turned to Jax and to the room. The city made mistakes, the clerk said, voice level. For years we looked away when we should have looked straight. This plaque is for the process you put in place that forces us to look straight. It belongs to your shop and to this diner, because both kept the rules even when it was hard. It is the least we owe this block. She set the plaque on the counter. The engraving did not brag. Maintains city fleet to specification. It read, compliance exemplary. On time, the words sat there like clean tools. Tommy leaned a shoulder into the counter and grinned. The old name is gone. He said, you gave this street a new name to believe in. Thanks for the oil change. Kesha felt the sentence land where scars used to live. Not a benediction. An audited fact. The ledger settled. The balance moved to good. The rush built and eased, plates moving like choreography. A man in a suit came in with the expression of someone trying to make amends with himself. He ate in the quiet the room required, and left a tip that said, "I am learning." A mother slid into a booth with forms to fill. Her little girl carried a plastic crown by its teeth. The girl pointed at the feather. "What is that?" she asked. Kesha lifted the keychain. "Let the small weight rest in the small hand. It means you can go where you want when you are ready," she said. The girl nodded like a queen and returned the feather with ceremony. Jax finished his first cup and looked out at the street. He did not count dangers. He counted proofs. A school bus that had limped through autumn rolled smooth past the window. The grace that comes from boring work done on time. Two riders idled by on stock pipes and legal plates and did not perform for anyone. A cruiser drifted past without stare or swagger. Paper had done what fists never could. It had taught the block to keep time. His phone buzzed once. Morrison. Sentencing calendars set. The message read, "No circus. You will not be called." Then, another line. "Your records did the heavy lift. Spend your afternoon on something that stays fixed." He slid the phone away. His eyes moved to the feather in the case, then to Kesha, then to the window where the lot behind the grocery sat empty and warm. He raised a brow, a question offered without pressure. She understood before the words existed. Her hand found the keychain. The metal cooled her palm like a promise. Tommy caught the motion and waved her off with a spatula, like a judge signing a warrant. "Go," he said. "Bring back the smell of wind." In the lot, the asphalt held the sun. Jax rolled out a bike, and she knew it before the light hit the tank. It was not a training machine. It was his machine, the one he handled like a piece of his own spine, the seat worn where his balance lived, the bars at that exact angle he never let anyone change. He was trusting her with his stillness. He set the helmet on her head and buckled the strap with the same care he used on seals and wrenches. He did not stand behind her like a wall. He stood beside her where a voice could travel. "Wait on the balls of your feet," he said. "Eyes to the line you want, not to the thing you fear." Throttle is a conversation. When the machine talks, answer with breath. She eased the clutch and let the engine's patience lift her into motion. The lot widened, air found her sleeves. The world rearranged around the hum. She looked where she wanted to go, and the line opened. Left foot up, right foot up. And the old lie in her bones did not jump the curb to chase her. It stayed where it had been told to stay, in rooms with glass and stamps, in drawers, where seals slept under neat initials. Jax jogged once, then stopped and watched. He did not perform pride. He let the moment belong to her and to ordinary air. She circled, slowed, feet down clean. A laugh lifted out of her chest. Not loud, just true. "Again," he said. "Again," she answered, and the word meant more than another laugh. It meant life. She rode until breath and balance shook hands. When they finished, he wheeled the bike to the shadow and set the stand. She unbuckled, hair shaken loose, palm on the warm bar for one quiet beat, as if greeting a threshold that had kept its promise. The sun put gold on the tank like it had been waiting for this. They walked back. The bell gave the room its old note, and the room gave it back without flinching. Kesha crossed the floor with her own rhythm and set the feather by the register. Not on display and not hidden, the way you store a tool you plan to use again. Afternoon thinned to that kind light that forgives edges. Across the street, the shop bays lowered, one by one, lids closing like eyes that trust the dark. A city van pulled away smooth, signal blinking its patient language. The plaque on the wall caught dusk and returned it without show. Kesha stood a moment at the doorway and let the horizon do its quiet work. Jack stepped to the curb, ready to ride his loop, not from need now but from habit that had become promise. He lifted two fingers toward her, and that was where the old story would have ended. But she saw him in a new ledger. She had been given 2 receipts, she thought. One for the truth, stamped with time and chain and an end to shadows. One for the time it took to heal, signed in small daily clicks and ordinary miles. Both paid for, both filed where her hands could find them without fear. She lifted 2 fingers, and the gesture read like ink drying. Inside, plates clinked. A child laughed at a milk mustache. Tommy called corner with the calm of a man who trusts the room to move. Outside, the cat chose a tire for a throne and closed its eyes, like order were warm. Jack swung a leg over the machine and did not rush the start. The engine came alive in a note so steady it felt like breath. Not triumph, not warning, a deep ordinary song in light that promised only another normal day. The sound held, the street answered, and the name of that music was Freedom Built to Last. At its heart, this story reminds us that silence, though it may feel safe, often protects the wrong side of truth. Real courage isn't found in shouting the loudest or fighting with fists. It's in choosing to act with integrity when the world expects you to turn away. Jax, Kesha, and the Hawks teach us that justice doesn't always come through revenge, but through consistency, patience, and the quiet strength to keep showing up for what's right. In life, we may not all face the same kind of violence or prejudice, but we all face moments where doing nothing feels easier than doing right. The lesson is clear. Real gold doesn't fear the fire. When we confront injustice with calm, persistence, and clarity, we become the proof that decency still matters and that redemption isn't a miracle. It's maintenance. For anyone who has ever felt small, overlooked, or afraid to speak, this story is a reminder that your voice, your story, and your worth are not negotiable. It takes time to rebuild what was broken, but every small act of honesty is a brick in that foundation. You don't have to change the world overnight. Just refuse to let it change what's human in you. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what part of their journey spoke to you, or share your own story of standing up quietly but firmly for what's right. Don't forget to like this video to help others find it, and subscribe so you won't miss the next powerful story about courage, dignity, and second chances. May your evening be calm, your heart steady, and your path lit by the kind of peace that only truth can build.